Well, good morning again, and thank you so much for joining the second day of the Climate Change Education Solutions Summit at Grand Valley State University. We are continuing in this webinar with community presentations, really looking at the climate change solutions from the variety of different angles. And I am delighted to introduce our first speaker.
Okay. Well, apologies for that delay. I checked everything before I started and it was supposed to be there. But thank you to GVSU for the opportunity to be here and be part of this Summit Solutions. And on behalf of everyone at CCL, thank you. If there's one thing we'd like you to know about Citizens Climate Lobby, it's that our overall goal is to be building the political will for a livable world. Everything we do under our banner is kind of directed towards getting good policy and good legislation enacted in the United States. What you'd would also like you to know is that CCL started as an organization about 15 years ago in California, and since then has developed across the country and across the world. There are, in fact, chapters in every single congressional district in the United States. State of Michigan has 17 chapters, so all of our representatives in Congress do have a CCL chapter who communicates with them. We operate on a set of core values. First one being personal power, that we do not intend to be an organization that speaks as a broad organization. We want individuals to develop their own voice and speak to their own representatives in Congress. CCL is a place where you can develop that voice and feel your own sense of power as a citizen in the country. We're also really committed to bipartisanship. The climate change issue is so significant that we can't afford to have altering administrations every 4 years, where one comes in and then throws out everything the other administration was doing. We need to have continuous, constant, steady policy leading towards the mitigation of climate change. We're committed to relationships, even if your member of Congress isn't of your political persuasion. We want to develop a relationship. We know that if you change minds, that only happens in relationships. We believe in integrity. We're going to do the best we possibly can and keep our word when we give it. Diversity is one of our values. We're all in this together, and all of us have to be working together in order to develop climate change solutions. Diversity we view in a broad sense, not only in terms of gender or ethnicity, sexuality, but also political persuasion. We really encourage conservative persons to join CCL. That's an important voice in developing climate solutions. We believe in optimism. I like to say, if you're ever feeling like you're short of depression, just study climate change for a while. You have to be optimistic to stick with it, because this is a tough problem, but it takes determination, and optimism is a choice, not a personal characteristic. And our other core value is focus. There are a lot of proposals of what to do about climate change. We intend to focus on the ones that do the most to mitigate the damage. So we want to see legislation that takes a big bite out of carbon pollution and as quickly as possible. And so we're focused on legislation that accomplishes that sort of a goal. And if we do our job well, I'd like to think that we end up looking like a choir. Choir has got all different voices. You know, there's some people are great soloists, and that's fine. But some people are altos, and some are sopranos, and some are bass, and some are tenors. The power of a choir is that it includes all the voices. And if Citizens Climate Lobby is successful, we'd like to think we've a place where everybody can exercise their voice so that together we make a unified conversation about climate change and how we need to mitigate climate change. We start with accepting the science. I suspect that many of you have seen this kind of a chart that explains the greenhouse effect. We aren't climate scientists, but we understand what we're being told, and we accept that science. And because we do, it kind of leads us into understanding where we need to move to. Here's an illustration that I think some of you may have seen also that just shows the trajectory we're on. If you look at this annual temperature variations starting in 1895, you can see that we're constantly moving toward warmer and warmer climates. That trajectory, if continues, isn't sustainable for life on this planet. And so we understand that that's happening, and we feel we need to move forward in order to do that. Well, because we understand the background of what's happening, we need to speak up. And speaking up is what lobbying is. I know there are images of lobbying that revolve around big dollars and big PAC money, but we're ordinary citizens. When we go to Washington, D.C., we pay our own way. When we work with our contacting our members of Congress, we do our own homework. We develop our own speeches that we want to deliver to that member of Congress. We are individual citizens who work together towards a goal. We're really just a lot of regular people. So I know the image, but no, we're not that kind of a lobbyist. We're really more the kind of lobbyist that Katharine Hayhoe recommends, which is that to just simply talk about it. In her work, she points out the fact that probably the main weakness of those who want to engage in climate solutions is that they don't talk about it. We self-censor. Whereas most people need to hear from someone they know and someone they trust, and that's you. And so you need to talk with your family. You need to talk with your neighbors and friends. You need to talk at the organizations where you belong. And you also need to be engaged in talking with your legislators. But the most powerful voice you have is your own if you talk about it. When we do talk with our members of Congress, CCL is focused on 4 legislative goals. Carbon pricing is number 1, and we want to put a price on carbon so that the price that the damage that polluters do is brought back into the cost of doing business. And when those carbon fees are collected, we believe there should be a carbon dividend for American citizens. So it should be returned on a monthly basis to each of us as Americans. We believe in forest and natural-based solutions as much as possible. We need to preserve the ways in which the natural world already functions to sequester carbon. And we need to encourage the renewal of those resources in the natural world. We need to work on building electrification and efficiency. It's an old slogan, but you've probably heard it. But the cheapest electricity is electricity you don't use. The cleanest electricity is electricity you don't use. So in those places where we can be more efficient, we want to do that. And in those places where we can convert from carbon fuels to electrification, we want to encourage that. The other area we focus on is clean energy permitting reform. You can build all the solar farms and windmills you want, but they have to connect to the grid. And that's a challenge to get the permitting in place that allows that infrastructure to be built. And so that's one of the key areas that can move us forward in being a cleaner energy economy. I'm hoping that Dave Fraker is online now because he was going to pick up at this point. But Elena, have you seen him?
And this is probably a perfect time to finish, thank you so much for being on time. So this is a great time to open up for the question. So Peter, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about opportunities to engage with climate lobby. And we have a question online from Zygmunt Kozicki. Water quality is a hidden issue. The EPA and other organizations are only responding to the most obvious health threats associated with water quality. This is where more should be done. Can citizens' climate lobby consider this as an agenda item that requires more emphasis? So what are your thoughts?
If I understand the question correctly, yes, water is a serious problem, or the pollution of water, and it's intimately involved in a lot of energy issues. For instance, fracking wells use an incredible amount of water and then don't have any way to clean it up afterwards. So I think you have to understand the intersection of all these different issues. And I think as we deal with our move towards alternative energies, which we hope to spur, I would hope that that leads to a migration away from this dependence on fossil fuels and the kind of pollution that they engage in order to produce fossil fuels. So I would hope that by incentivizing the alternative, we can therefore then move away from where these negative impacts are experienced.
Thank you, Peter. Well, thank you again very much for this great engagement presentation. And with this, we are ready to move forward. You probably have noticed that we skipped our first presenter and he is now here. So we'll come back to David Crookall. Right now, we will continue with our program, and our next presenter is Dave Chapman from American Meteorological Society and Michigan Alliance for Environmental and Outdoor Education. And Dave, thank you for being here. The screen is yours. And Peter, if you could please unshare your screen so that we could have Dave on. And Dave, are you able to, if you could please unmute yourself, and you should be able to share your screen. Again, just we are sharing it with this green button at the bottom. And I am going to ask Peter to mute. So again, Dave Chapman is our next presenter.
I hit share screen and it's showing something else.
So you should be able to see share screen at the bottom of your screen. Since nobody's sharing right now. Perfect.
Is that
yes,
showing
I
up?
can see that you are sharing. Yes, perfect.
Okay.
I can see your screen.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you. Well, I'm Dave Chapman. I'm a recently retired high school teacher, and you can see my email address there on the screen. You may want to write it down because I'm going to have to go through these slides pretty quickly. I'll give it again toward the end a couple of times. The title, it says K-12 education, although I do have a few things that would be very relevant for college faculty. And if you aren't a K-12 teacher or a college instructor, I really hope some of the opportunities that I'm going to mention you might share with people that are working in those fields. The title also says ice, so you might understand that I'm going to reference the use of ice cores to study ancient climates. So the first issue we have to address really is, why would we want to look at past climate changes rather than what's going on now? Well, first of all, it provides evidence that climate changes, that it's not static. And if you have individuals who are skeptical about climate change, and because in their lifetime and their parents and their grandparents' lifetime, climate seems to be fairly constant, this provides certainly dramatic evidence that climates are not immutable. Secondly, you can see the causes of climate change and the way climate change connects to lots of other things happening around the world. And finally, we derive data from these study of ancient climate changes to fill the climate models that help us in making predictions for the future. So when scientists study ancient climate changes, they use proxy data, that is physical characteristics that represent accurately changes in either temperature or precipitation. And they include corals, particularly a cross-section of corals. The fourth picture at the bottom is actually a cross-section of a coral showing the different layers, pollen of the different types of plants, trees, and that are growing at different times, ice cores that I'll mention a little bit more in a minute. Tree rings, of course, have often been referenced, and there's a picture in the lower left. Caves, but really caves are looking at the cross-section of stalactites and stalagmites, which build up in layers and are good indications of humidity and sometimes temperature. Scientists have even used pack rat middens, which are the collections that these rats that live in caves collect for at least several hundred years back, not as far back as some of the others. Ocean and lake sediments are a rich source of information. And historical data here means writings or records by people prior to the time we had instruments measuring temperature and precipitation, often sailors, farmers, and others. Here's an example of a proxy data. Oxygen isotopes in the ocean have been found to accurately represent changes in the average global temperature. And a really dramatic example is shown here. In the left, it has oxygen 18 and oxygen 16 isotopes that are part of water. The oxygen 16 is a lighter weight, and therefore it evaporates more readily into the air. And during times like we're in now, in interglacial periods, the water lands back and runs back into the ocean readily, and the percentages of oxygen 16 and oxygen 18 remain fairly constant. But during the great continental glacial periods, this evaporated water fell and became incorporated part of the continental glaciers. It was much higher concentrations of oxygen 16 and oxygen 18. And as a result, the water in the ocean had a much higher percentage of oxygen 18 that can be found in the ocean sediments, and particularly in some of the fossil structures of organisms that are found in the ocean. What's special about ice cores? Well, they're incredibly detailed records, and they provide a wide variety of different kinds of things to be observed and measured. They include volcanic ash, forest fire ash, storms producing dust, and these can be events happening all around the world. A great increase in volcanic ash may indicate, for example, periods of greater plate tectonic movement. Car exhaust is one that really surprised me, but in the very recent ice cores, the ice cores toward the top, we have found very clear evidence of the increase in lead in car exhaust and a dramatic decrease in lead when United States and Europe banned the use of lead in gasoline. And it's amazing that in the polar ice in Antarctica and in Greenland, we can see evidence of that. Another thing that we can learn from the ice is that as the snow changes into ice, it traps air. And these pockets, these little bubbles of air, are actually a reservoir of the type of atmosphere that we had at different times in the past. And in the lower right, you can see a graph that's been created where they've measured the gas concentration of carbon dioxide going all the way back 800,000 years, and see the graph there that it fluctuates up and down at different times. But at the far right side, you see a 2008 measurement of carbon dioxide, and it is significantly higher than it was for the last 800,000 years. Another thing we can learn from studying the ice is understand some things about sea level rise, both how it's changed in the past, but also looking at the movement of ice, the thickness of ice, how much is melting, where it's melting. We can begin to get information that helps us understand why sea level is rising now and what the risks are of sea level going into the future. If you're teaching, here are some ideas. You could use oxygen isotope connection to temperature in a chemistry lesson, and in the process, help illustrate some of the methods used by science. You could have students compare current changes to past changes in climate, so they can see that the current changes are dramatically different than those in at least the last 800,000 years. Students can use the data to determine what causes climate change, both in the past and today, and they're different. And of course, there's this project that I've been involved in, Project ICE, has a rich variety of other resources. Project ICE is a course for K-12 teachers in paleoclimatology and ice core science. It's going to be offered for the first time to teachers this coming summer, June 23rd to 29th. They would be at Oregon State at the university's Center for Oldest Ice Exploration, or COLDEX. But prior to that, there would be some work that would be done at home. And this is a program sponsored by the American Meteorological Society. You must apply, however, by November 30th. So that's coming up soon. And in the lower right-hand corner, you see Beth Mills' email address for getting information about applying. I'll come back and give you a chance to write that down again if you would like. On the left side of this page, it gives some, I think, important information about Project ICE. Travel, lodging, meals, and 3-credit graduate tuition will be provided free at no cost for teachers in the program. And a part of it will be visiting the Oregon State University's Ice Core Lab, Marine Geologic Repository, which is ocean sediments, and you'll be interacting with a variety of research scientists who are working on ice core research. And there's a whole variety of teaching activities that you'll be exposed to. On the right side of the column here, you'll see there are actually 2 workshops coming up in Michigan that will be going over some of this in more detail and actually going through some of the activities. One is November 11th in Kalamazoo, and one is December 3rd in Ann Arbor. Both will be 3.5 hours. The link there at the bottom of the page is for registering for either one of those 2 workshops, but you could also get that information by contacting me. And again, there's my email address. If you're a college faculty, they have a program at Oregon State that is similar to this, but geared for college teaching, and it's called School of Ice, and it will be available in July 21st through the 25th next summer. Finally, a few other important resources for educators. The American Meteorological Society, starting next fall and continuing on into the future, will have a 13-week online course for K-12 teachers called Earth's Climate System. It will include investigating the relationships between global climate, Earth's atmosphere, and the world's ocean. It will involve both understanding the natural and anthropogenic climate change. It utilizes real-time data from NOAA, NASA, and other sources. You'll be investigating the data and learning about climate models and participating in some activities which you would be able to use in your teaching as well. In addition, the Michigan Alliance for Environmental and Outdoor Education has a Climate Education Action Committee, which is developing a number of workshops and resources for teachers of all kinds coming up. And you could contact me about information about either of these, since I'm involved in both. So, do we have some questions?
David, I just want quickly to say thank you for sharing this wealth of information. And I see the question coming from Robert Hollister, who is actually sharing in other opportunity for teachers is polar steam, and he's sharing with us a link that I'm going also to put in the chat in a minute. So thank you, Bob, for being here and for sharing the link. I have also the question from Sylvia, Project ICE. Will travel be zero or lowest possible pollution? Hey, this is a great question. So what about the impacts of travel? So while you are answering this question, I'll also put the links in the chat.
Okay. So I understand the question is, if people are traveling to these events, isn't that generating carbon dioxide and so forth? I know that the American Meteorological Society has instituted a number of programs, both in-house and as options for participants who would like to elect to do some things as carbon offsets. And the data stream courses that AMS has offered, of course, are all online, so there's no traveling involved in that. But in terms of the others, there would be.
Again, we have another question from Sylvia. Can we make this education mandatory for anybody running for elective office?
An interesting idea. I don't think politically that's in the cards. And the other piece of it is that we're doing some things. I mentioned up here the Michigan Alliance for Environmental and Outdoor Education. We are doing some things to reach out to not just science teachers or middle school teachers, but social studies teachers, language arts and English teachers. There are a variety of people, and that there are ways in which they can be involved in climate education in different ways.
Well, thank you, Dave. Thank you for this phenomenal presentation and also for sharing the wealth of information. If there is anything that you want to diffuse through the CCS mailing list or website or social media, I'll be very happy to post it as well for our teachers participating in this network. And with this, I want to just give you another round of applause. And we are going to move to our next presenter, Dee Jones from Jump Ahead L3C. And Dee Jones will speak about the esports and the way how they can help to address climate change. Thank you for being here, Dee Jones. And please feel free to share your screen with the green button at the bottom. Perfect, you are on.
He's still muted.
Yeah, just please make sure to unmute yourself. We see your screen, but we cannot yet hear you. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me? All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So how you doing, everyone? My name is Dee Jones. I am the Chief Energy Officer of Jump Ahead L3C. I'm actually in Oakland, California for a green lining event. So I'm here for climate change in California. So intro, esports, what is esports? I'm going to be talking about video games and esports. So esports is competitive video gaming. Climate change is a global crisis. The potential of esports that can contribute to addressing climate change is some of the things I will be speaking on. So there is a video I'm going to play. So there is something called the Fortnite creator, and the Fortnite creator allows you to create your own universe within Fortnite if this video will actually play. If not, I'll just go past the video just because of time. Doesn't look. And so you can put solar panels and utilize the game Fortnite. This is actually shown at a live event that I was at. and you can actually place solar panels, you can place billboards, you can put solar panels on buildings. You can literally put anything in this game Fortnite, which is called the Fortnite Creator, which they were using, and you can actually utilize this as an educational tool to educate students and people on climate change. Sorry. So energy efficiency. You can actually create esports venues or start by creating esports venues, or there are esports venues that have energy efficiency. So as you see, they are playing, they are competing and watching a event, but this is on an LED screen. This is some cool, innovative esports venue that I like. Esports actually consumes less energy compared to traditional sports. So your basketballers or your footballs or soccers or baseballs. This is a alternative to traditional sports. It is actually the largest industry in the world. It is larger than Hollywood, is larger than the film industry and the music industry, and it's 2 times the revenue. So esports is a huge, huge, huge industry, and I am very involved in the esports industry, and I also work for a video game company, and I'm looking to also put some of those solar panels in the game that we're working on called Blackpoint. So yeah, you can create sustainable venues and use energy efficiency hardware to actually reduce your carbon footprint as you're gaming. Some online competitions. Online competitions reduce the need for travel. This right here is the electric vehicle. So, you know, electric vehicles don't pollute carbon emissions to the earth. And so online competitions and somebody having Wi-Fi and you having internet at your home and you competing on an online competition. Some people have online platforms where you can compete on your favorite game. So if it is a Fortnite or an NBA 2K or a Call of Duty or a League of Legends, some of those popular games that are out there, people actually can compete online. So all of the need for travel and people that do have the gas powered vehicles that usually link up to or go to different events, you could actually reduce your carbons by hosting online events. So esports is a tool to reduce carbons, but also have an economic impact. Sustainable infrastructure. Esports organizations can invest in renewable energy sources for powering events and venues. Solar panels and efficient cooling systems can help reduce carbon consumption. There, as I was speaking on before, this is actually a picture of the game Fortnite. And as you can see, there's solar panels on the game Fortnite. So there is something that you can use called the Fortnite Creative, the Unreal 5 engine, which they actually use to develop the game Fortnite, and then the Unreal Fortnite Creator, which you can actually use the gaming tool that they actually use to develop the game Fortnite, and you can beautify the game. You can make the game look real. You can make the game look however you would like it to, and you can also put solar panels, you can put geo, you can put a lot of cool renewable energy sources into these video games. Then you can educate people on these different worlds and things that you see, how you see the universe and how you see the world being changing with renewable energy improvements. Some educational initiatives. Esports can raise awareness about climate change through in-gaming events and advertising. So if there's an organization that would like to get involved with climate change, it really doesn't matter the organization. If you have a niche or a need to try to address climate change and want to use these Fortnite tools, these tools are available to educational institutions, nonprofits, and they can utilize these, even the financial industry. These tools are available to people. They can develop financial centers and different centers, and you can literally use these tools, and kids can actually develop games and develop worlds. And they actually have a congressional competition where kids, I believe 6th through 12th grade or 8th through 12th grade it's a congressional competition where youth can actually develop video games where they can educate congressional leadership on climate change. So these tools that are available, they're going to be available in King County too, as I'm working with a lot of organizations to bring these educational tools to our community and so farther. Sponsorships and partnerships. You can attract eco-conscious sponsorships and partners to support sustainable initiatives, collab with eco-friendly organizations and joining campaigns. offset carbons. Esports organizations can invest in carbon offset programs to compensate their emissions, planting trees, or supporting renewable energy projects to offset carbon footprints. Green practices in production. Use eco-friendly practices in esports events and productions. As I was saying, using eco-friendly equipment that when you're powering your esports competitions or hosting esports events at large venues or little venues or any venue, there are renewable energy alternatives that you can actually utilize to reduce your carbon footprints and reduce the energy that you actually use while gaming and competing. You can also use reusable and recyclable products for stage setups and event branding. Community engagement. Organize community-driven initiatives like esports charity competitions for climate change causes. Engage fans and community in sustainable efforts. So here's a picture of a large esports venue, and there is no limit to capacity of what you can educate people on when you're hosting an event. So if there is climate conscious organizations like D. Jones, Jump Ahead L3C, that looks to be on the big stage one day and educating billions of people as I wish to on climate change to be able to change our world. The United Nations goals also aligns with the Fortnite creative and these tools that I'm also showing you. So there is a large international global usage and cool things that we can do to educate our communities using these tools. Case studies show examples of esports organizations leading in sustainable practices and highlight the impact of their efforts on reducing carbon emissions. There you see a nice briefcase of cash, because I would believe we should spend a lot of cash on renewable energy and climate change and making the universe a better and cleaner place for the future generations. Esports, 7 video games. 7 video games can help address climate change through energy efficiency, education, and partnerships, collab and collective efforts, and contribute to a greener future. So there are a lot of video games that people can actually, that has a social responsibility and a social impact to them, like, as I was saying, Fortnite, Call of Duty that has solar panels. All of these games, they also have in some of these esports competitions that people host across the planet universally. Jump Ahead L3C, as I host esports competitions for our community and other communities, there's a social impact that can be created and utilized and tracked and started with esports. And here's my info right here. My website is www.thejumpahead.com. My name is D. Jones. dstifhendricks@gmail is my email address. If there is anyone that works in K through 12 or any climate organizations or any colleges that would like to be connected directly to Epic Games, who makes Fortnite, I actually have direct connection to these video game companies, and I can get you guys the educational tools to not have the traditional education, but the advanced educational tools that align with the United Nations goal to change the future of climate change utilizing esports and video games. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, D. Jones, for phenomenal presentation. This is so exciting, and I can just see how these tools can be so much more exciting for our students. I have a few questions from the audience. So the first one is from Tamara. What are your favorite games that incorporate climate change themes? Fortnite sounds like one. Are there others?
Yeah, I like Fortnite and Call of Duty. So Call of Duty, I'm a big Call of Duty guy, and there's solar panels and a lot of different energy efficiency equipment and different renewable energy sources on. So I would definitely say Call of Duty and Fortnite. I wish there were energy efficiencies on NBA 2K because I play basketball.
Thank you. And then Liv is asking, I do solar energy education with K-12 students. Have you had success getting teachers on board with this type of education?
I actually have been consulting with Kent District Libraries for a year and a half, and they purchased hundreds of thousands of dollars in esports equipment and computers to develop infrastructure. I've worked with colleges. I work with K through 12, so I have had a large success with esports, and I'd be willing to connect anyone K through K through 12 or colleges, anyone that would like to try to get these tools to their students to educate them using Fortnite.
Thank you so much. So I hope that we all would learn more from you. And you have mentioned that you are joining us from California right now, but you are based in Grand Rapids, right?
I am in Oakland, California for green lining the block because red lining is a thing, and we're green lining. We're actually creating the first electric vehicle rideshare in Grand Rapids. So we actually received some funding through an organization I'm independently contracted called C4. And so we are out here on a business event, connecting with the cohort and looking forward to starting that electric vehicle rideshare. Be looking out for it.
Well, congratulations. We're so lucky to have you here close to Grand Valley. So I hope we'll have more conversations about how we can engage college students in it as well. And there is another question from Stephanie Bayasi asking, are any games out there that address water conservation or water quality or quantity issues?
There you can actually use the Fortnite tool. You can actually start off creating the world and literally doing all of those things. So I would say the Fortnite tool, there's also something called the Unreal 5 engine where you can actually develop and start your own game from start to finish. And so there are gaming tools that you can create games too. So not only do they have Fortnite, but there's also tools that students and teachers can use to develop their own games. So if you just wanted to focus on water and educate people on water, there is a game that you can create literally for that.
Thank you so much. So another round of applause for D. Jones, and then we are going to move forward. You have noticed that we have shifted the program 15 minutes earlier, and then we will come back to our first speaker. Right now, we are moving to the next presentation by Marshall Kilgore of West Michigan Environmental Action Council, who will be talking about combating eco-anxiety in communities of color. Welcome, Marshall. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And Jones, once you stop sharing your screen, we will give this opportunity to Marshall. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. My name is Marshall Kilgore. I serve as the Director of Engagement for the West Michigan Environmental Action Council. I'm delighted to be here with you today to discuss combating eco-anxiety in communities of color. How wonderfully timely that we are joining here virtually today to discuss climate change. I want to thank Elena and Grand Valley State University for having me today. And I want to thank everyone who registered for these 2 engaging days focused on climate action. Climate change is such an urgent issue, and it is on us to not turn away, but to look it in the face and lead. We lead by example, like we're doing here today, joining together and finding effective solutions that help us mitigate this issue that is not going away. But together, we can adapt and overcome. I truly believe that. It's been around a year of me really digging in, researching, and most importantly, being in community with environmental leaders and stakeholders at the West Michigan Environmental Action Council. I've got a pretty interesting pathway that has led me here to WMEAC. I have a background in policy and politics, serving on Governor Whitmer's campaign in 2018, and most recently on Justice Kyra Harris Bolden's campaign for the Michigan Supreme Court in 2022. In both of these roles, I was able to work with diverse stakeholders and build coalitions, which is really important with most of the things that folks have talked about here today. In addition, my work has also taught me the importance of not shying away from deeply rooted problems and rolling up your sleeves to find solutions to those problems. And one thing I know is people, and so much of politics is high energy, involves people, and involves deeply rooted problems. So it was a more natural than it may seem progression to join WMEAC, lead our engagement efforts, getting out into the community and chatting with our stakeholders who care about issues such as climate change. So through my work, I'm noticing many things. There's a diverse variety of folks who are interested in climate change in our environment, and they're interested in our environment in many different ways. But a common thread that's woven throughout all of these things that folks are excited about in terms of the environment or concerned about is this type of anxiety. And it's a different kind of anxiety. It's not just the everyday anxieties that we may face or be more familiar with. Before we start, I'll let you know that I'm not a therapist or a mental health professional in any way. And I originally thought, well, maybe I should let someone else cover this topic. But there are two main reasons why I decided to chat with you all about this today. This is not commonly discussed in our community. So one, it's not commonly discussed in our community, right? In communities of color, specifically my community. And two, we combat this social phenomenon by what we're doing today, right? By being in community with one another, showing compassion and empathy, sharing our stories. The power of sharing stories and experiences is so important, and we shouldn't discount that. To expand further, when you look at research, TED Talks, social media, we rarely get a snapshot, which is what I'm going to provide today, just a short snapshot in our time together about what African-American, Black communities, and Latino or Hispanic communities face, right? We don't get that in terms of talking about environmental stressors. We often get this overarching catch-all look at environmental concerns. Now, in turn, what that does when we have sort of this very catch-all, overarching quick glaze of environmental issues that are happening around the world is this allows for communities of color to continue to be shortchanged and forgotten about. So the short snapshot that we're doing today is not only uplifting the communities that are left behind and giving us a snapshot of what communities of color go through in terms of environmental issues and why climate change is becoming more worried about in communities of color, but it's also to allow us to make sure that we can continue to have positive changes we move throughout the future, so that instead of this catch-all view, we're able to see more specific zeroed-in experiences. There's a story that's been shared many times about a gorilla community, and this speaks to what we're discussing today. The gorilla community was discovered by anthropologists in which a group of the gorillas from this community was displaying signs of behavior that could be viewed as depression. The anthropologists decided to remove the depressed gorillas for 6 months, and when they came back from removing that group of gorillas, all of the other gorillas were dead. And that story, be it grim, speaks to what we're going to talk about in just a moment here. It talks about how those groups, that group of depressed chimps, those gorillas who were going through it and were showing signs of depression, they were down, but they served as an early warning system of the village, of their community of gorillas. So maybe they knew about snakes or severe weather that was coming. So when we talk about eco-anxiety, how we're going to do in just a moment, we shouldn't call folks alarmist. We shouldn't tell them to shove down their worries or that there's more important things to worry about. Maybe the folks, within our community of color who are experiencing eco-anxiety are serving as an early warning system to these deep issues that we need to address, and we have to look directly in the face. So I'm going to share my screen now and take us to a short presentation here. There we are. To discuss a little bit more about eco-anxiety. So WEMIAC has been around since 1968, formed with just a diverse group of folks who are concerned about many different issues. Our service area is an 8-county West Michigan region: Allegan, Barry, Ionia, Kent, Montcalm, Muskegon, Newaygo, and Ottawa, with a primary emphasis on Grand Rapids, Holland, and Muskegon metropolitan areas. So I gave you a little bit about me, but there's a little bit more about WEMIAC. Our mission is to work collaboratively alongside our diverse community to educate, engage, and advocate for environmental values, environmental and climate justice, and a healthy and resilient community for all. There we are. So we talked a little bit about eco-anxiety, and I gave you a little bit about it, but what is it, right? It's a broad term that encompasses dread about environmental issues like pollution and disposal of toxic waste, as well as climate-specific fears, such as increasing rates of extreme weather and sea level rise. Language is important because it helps us navigate our experiences. We want to give space for this collective trauma while recognizing the everyday traumas that we may hold as well. If you look at this, and a lot of this research is going to be from Yale, I understand I only have a few minutes, so we're going to condense a little bit here. So let's just talk about overarching trends. On the left, we see that younger adults are experiencing eco-anxiety more. If you zero in on the US, which is the fourth graph down there, 71% of adults 18 to 29 are noticing eco-anxiety more and more. 12% of Americans say that they struggle to stop themselves from consuming bad news about global warming. And this is exactly what we want to look at in our conversation today. Hispanic and Latino and Black Americans are more likely to be alarmed or concerned about global warming than our white counterparts. 27% of the Black community is saying that we're concerned, we're alarmed about climate change. This research is coming from the Yale Program on Climate Change Communication and the George Mason University Center for Climate Change Communication. And then when we look at the Hispanic and Latino community, we're seeing that 37% of that community is engaging in this eco-anxiety like we're discussing today. So where does this come from? I have many examples, but let's just talk about heat quickly here. So we know that we're facing warming temperatures and more intense and frequent heat waves, right? So these disadvantaged communities, our frontline communities, our elderly, our youth, people of color have higher rates. We know that people of color have higher rates in some instances as heart disease, diabetes, asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or COPD. So heat stress can exacerbate heart disease and diabetes. And warming temperatures also, I believe someone noted earlier, this can result in more pollen and smog, which can worsen asthma and COPD. So this is why we're seeing increased rates of eco-anxiety in our communities, because it's adding on to the existing marginalization that we have within communities of color. So I've given you a background of, one, we should not look away from climate change in this issue. We know now that we are seeing higher rates within our frontline communities. Youth are saying that they have increasing rates of anxiety, eco-anxiety. We see that communities of color are having increased rates of eco-anxiety due to the experiences and the marginalization that we already have. So now what do we do going forward? I'm going to skip forward a few slides just to make sure we stay on time here. How do we combat this? Just as we combat our daily psychological anxieties with interventions, support systems, and positive actions, we must do the same for eco-anxiety. You can join a climate cafe, which is really cool. We're actually having one tonight, this evening. If you go on WMEX, any of our social media and type in WMEAC, we have an event tonight at the Last Mile Cafe that a climate cafe is simply coming together with friends and talking about this eco-anxiety. Just as we know, talking about everyday stressors is really helpful. You can reach out to local environmental organizations to volunteer or learn more. Please go to WMEAC.org, WMEX website, to learn more about what we're doing to combat eco-anxiety. Or, for example, a direct impact of how you can help with eco-anxiety is going to Just Air. We saw with the Canadian wildfires that it had a direct impact on our anxieties and our health. Just Air has an amazing app They have updates for you. So when we see these climate change events happen, we start tapping into that eco-anxiety, we can combat it. So I'd also encourage you to check out Just Air Solutions and see their app. And once again, do that positive action. Just tell those generalized anxieties, we have to do positive actions to combat those. Downloading the app for Just Air and knowing about the pollution, our air quality. We know that that's happening with climate change. And this is how we can help alleviate, help calm some of these eco-anxieties. It's been a pleasure speaking with you all today. This is something we could talk about all day. I wish I could talk about it more with you all, but please stay connected. There's my email, my LinkedIn, and all of my socials are this Marshall Kilgore. It's been a pleasure talking to you all.
Thank you, Marshall. Thank you for this really enlightening presentation, and you also give me hope. So we have many questions for you, and I'll try to have them all answered. So the first question is coming from Zygmunt Kozicki. Eco-anxiety is an important topic. Can you involve mental health providers in this concern? The idea that it is an early warning signal should be given more attention. Ignoring the threat is the slow demise of our communities.
Wow. Yeah, beautiful. And we are. There are many professionals from this Yale communication on climate change this was led by mental health professionals because they're seeing it more in their offices. Folks are talking about it more. So environmentalists, social activists, and mental health therapists are currently working together to combat what we're seeing higher rates of this. So thankfully, the people who are experts are also within this fight with us.
Thank you, thank you. And then there is another comment from Zygmunt. Please consider presenting this topic at the Great Lakes Environmental Festival. So here I'm passing this invitation to you.
Yes, thank you so much. Please connect with me. My email's there, and I'd love to hear from you all. I have loved every presentation today. It's been wonderful. Thank you again to GVSU and to you, Elena, for inviting me.
Thank you, Marshall, and just allowed myself to drop your contact email in the chat, so you can just copy and paste it and email Marshall if you have any questions. Sylvia is writing, excellent work, Marshall. Do you use any citizen scientist projects, for instance, to measure actual air pollution in frontline neighborhoods?
Yeah, so Just Air Solutions has 7 monitors specifically within the 49507 neighborhood, or excuse me, zip code. Go to Just Air Solutions and see the work that they're doing all throughout our state, both on the west side and east side. It has been transformative. Most of these air monitors are around schools, right? Because we want our youth, which is a frontline community, to be safe. So there has been direct citizen action. WMEAC is hopeful that we can really engage folks and teach them more about these air monitors. And we have a collaboration with Just Air coming up. So be on the lookout. Sign up for our newsletter at WMEAC, and we'll talk even more about that.
Yes, thank you for pointing this, Marshall. So Darren Riley was one of our featured speakers a year ago, and I hope that he will come back maybe with a separate webinar beyond this conference. So I also allowed myself to drop the copy of the website that you have recommended to connect to Just Air, so that I am sure Darren would be happy to answer more questions about his phenomenal work in the community. So thank you again, Marshall. Thank you for joining us. And I just cannot wait to learn more about all your wonderful work.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. With this, we are going to move forward to our initially first, but now last, but not the least, speaker in the program. So we will be joined today by Dr. David Crookall from Université Internationale de la Mer. There were some technical difficulties at the beginning of the webinar, so we couldn't bring David earlier in the program. So he is here now, ready to share his screen with us. Welcome, David, and please feel free to unmute yourself. You are on air, and we are ready for you whenever you are ready.
Okay, can you see my screen? No, I can't hear you.
We
Oh.
can hear you and we can see your screen. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, well, I'm in France, which is a little bit away from where you folks are. And the thing that I'm going to tell you about, I hope you'll agree that it will help to connect minds for a sustainable climate future. And I'd like to thank Elena and her team for organizing this. It's been a fantastic afternoon for me, afternoon and evening. Quick question, I don't know if I can get an idea of who's answering, but who has played a game? I think with the presentations we've seen, everybody. Educational game, yes. And a role play or participation about climate or climate change. I think a lot of people have. I guess there's no way we can gauge that, but I assume that you all have. What I'm going to be talking about is what I call, or what some people call, participatory simulation. And there are various examples here. There are so many. One is a UN, Model UN, you've heard of that. Fish banks, maybe some of you will have heard of that. Litosim is a thing in France. Aircraft pilot trainers, they're same thing, participatory simulation. And what they are is a simulation that involves people actually doing stuff and interacting with each other. The one I'm going to tell you about is the IOCS. But first, here are some pictures of people taking part in participatory simulations. Most of them are about the environment or about climate. The top right one is from a conference. I go to a conference every year on games and simulations, and a lot of the sessions are people actually playing, not talking about it. And there are other photos here that give you an idea of what they are. To illustrate the structure, this is a session that I did many years ago in Thailand, and the top 3 photos are people actually participating in the simulation. And the bottom 2 are debriefing, and I consider that as extremely important. You may have heard of Kolb, Dave Kolb, and his experiential learning cycle, which is here, and it corresponds very closely with games and debriefing. And in my view, you cannot really run a game and expect people to learn without debriefing fully. And it's a cyclical process. The IOCS, that's the name of the school that I've set up, runs a simulation, which is, IOCS means Inter-Ocean Climate School. And it's about the ocean and the climate. We do both together because you cannot really separate them. And inter means international, intercultural, interdisciplinary, and intergenerational. And you'll see why in a while. It's online. The topic of the last school was ocean, climate, and coast education. It was 3 intensive days from morning till evening. And these took place over 3 weeks. We have 12 to 20 participants, and we have a substantial debriefing at the end and during. The learning goals, I separate learning goals and simulation or game objectives because they're 2 totally different things. The learning goals for us are to understand the ocean, coast, climate nexus, how they all fit together and are interdependent. I should also add in there humans as well. And the objective that the participants have is to write a roadmap for climate, ocean, coast education policy. And they have to write this document, which is a policy document. The stakeholders, in other words, the roles that people take up, we start with a very long list and then they choose the ones that they think are most relevant. And here are some of them: tourism, education, natural resources, ocean and coastal planning. These are the activities that they do during the school. They look at rules, they study a, what's it called, a scenario. It takes quite a lot of time to build up. They have small group discussions, plenary meetings. They do writing and so on. This is a plan of the in 3 parts, the preparation. We have some preparatory activities, online game about oceans, and then we develop scenarios and roles together, and then they declare their positions. We have discussions, meetings, and in-game debriefs, and a small debriefing where we step out of the game for a short while and do a debriefing, and then the big debriefing at the end. And we have a wide variety of participants. We had participants from Brazil, Barbados, Europe, all over Europe, from India, Iran, Tunisia. And we had people from 19 to 60 years old. They came from different cultures. There was a reasonably good gender balance. And later, some of the participants, they became ambassadors for us, and they helped to promote the school. We're planning at some point to do a simulation for the small island developing states. And we have one, and that's going to be done by one of our participants. We asked them to fill in a questionnaire to give their feedback, and they all wish to learn a lot more and to improve their skills. Their engagement and their impression for learning was also good, and so were several other indicators. We use technology, of course. They need fast communication, and some places couldn't participate simply because they didn't have the fast internet. ADSL sort of works, but most of them really need fiber because of the heavy load on their systems. We use Discord, not Zoom, because it's free, it's very flexible, works for 24 hours, and you can configure it even on the fly. Google Docs for writing, Google Forms for the debriefings and getting feedback, and for the application, because people have to apply to join the school, and a date so that we can coordinate dates. And we use Zoom because we had a presenter who insisted on using Zoom. This is a picture of us participating in what's it called again? Our platform. And some of the roles again: farmers, industry, local government, ocean plan, science. And here they put up their labels on their screen. Another view of them. And again. And they also, in their questionnaire, we asked for open-ended questions, and some of them said it was a wonderful experience. I felt very good with all the participants. It was enriching, and they felt happy, engaged, and surrounded by beautiful minds, which is not terribly good English, but it's something that some people used. At the end, we gave them a certificate of attendance, and we think that it really was helping people to connect minds for a sustainable climate future. And it's one among many climate change education solutions. Before I say thank you for listening, if you have, this is an opportunity, if you're interested in submitting a paper to a journal called Geoscience Communication, done by the European Geosciences Union. And the theme of the special issue is climate and ocean education and communication. Communication is extremely important. Education cannot be done without communication, and most communication really has its objective as education. So please, if you want the website at the bottom, you can flash the screen and go to the call for papers. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, David, for this great presentation, and what a fantastic synergy among all the speakers in this session. So I have also shared in the chat with everyone in the audience the link to your website. Many thanks for sharing this opportunity. I also see many questions coming from the audience, so let's go to the question from Stephanie Bayazi. Oh, she's saying, I have played a game. So yes, she is familiar with this.
Come out
So
of
this is
my
great.
sharing screen. Do you know? I just click on the
Oh yes, you are still. Oh yes, you can just. You want to share another
stop share.
resource?
Okay,
Yes,
gotcha.
for sure. You can just share whatever window you want to
Okay.
share on your computer.
Okay. So, questions?
So yes, would you perhaps give us some demonstration of any of the work associated with that game? I don't know if it will be technically possible to share right now on your screen, or perhaps you can just talk a little bit about it.
About what, sorry?
Or any examples of using that interface for teaching climate change?
Well, what I put on the slides was what I had, what I prepared.
Mhm.
It's difficult to share. I shared some of the screenshots of people participating, and there's so many other fantastic ways of learning about climate. And we've heard some here in your conference. They all look all very, very enthralling.
Thank you. Thank you. So I have shared perhaps the easiest way actually to engage with your material would be through going to the website, right? So for those of you who had questions about how to engage with this, I just dropped the link in the chat to oceansclimate.wixsite.com, Oceans Climate, and you can find more information there also about this upcoming special issue. Thank you all speakers today. I see lots of synergy among all of you. So perhaps we can just have a few minutes for the discussion involving everyone in this session. I have been, listening to all your presentations. I was almost, dreaming about the co-housing community showcased by Christine, where we can also engage in the political action as we were urged by Peter, and at the same time we could use these virtual tools that were shown to us by Dee Jones and by David Crookall, and also I think how these tools can be used to overcome eco-anxiety. So great synergy, and perhaps that could be kind of our closing discussion, because we all are listening, we are all taking questions from the audience, and please keep sending those questions. But I think this is also can be a moment for your questions for each other, and comments, and perhaps just thoughts how we all can engage in collaboration using all these different solutions for climate change education. So there is another question coming from the audience, from Stephanie: the consideration of gaming to educate people in water conservation is of interest to me, but I'm not a gamer and feel unsure how to use this platform.
You asked about this platform. Are you talking about the IOCS or about games in general?
Well, this is a question to Stephanie, but my
Okay.
interpretation will be probably about IOCS, any gaming. Yeah, Stephanie is asking the question about any gaming platform. So any of you feel free to take this question. This is not my area of expertise, so I am here to learn from you all.
Can I say something? Suggest something? Well, what you might call the world of games is so huge and so varied that it's very difficult to give any general comment. The one thing that I think about using games, as I said during my presentation, is that you have to debrief. Another thing is that some teachers, people, tend to be a little nervous about running games. And the thing is that people tend to sort of jump in and they do it. And yet there's quite a lot of training that's needed to be able to run games well, so that the participants get the learning that they want and do not get, as it were, harmed by things that happen during the simulation. But if they're done well and debriefed well, they can be an eye-opener for many people. There's one that's run out of MIT and other places. It's the En-ROADS, which is very much based on algorithms. And you can base a role play around that. I've participated several times and it's very exciting. And then there's other ones where you have cards and you lay the cards out on a table and you make connections among them, among all the cards. And that too is very engaging. And the thing is, what's engaging about all these is there are people doing it together. There are games where you can do it by yourself. That's okay. But I think part of the excitement comes from people working all these problems out together and making decisions together through discussion. And I think that's one of the main things. And then the other problem with games is they do tend to take time.
This is so true. I use En-ROADS myself in my classes. I wrote a few labs for my climate change class using En-ROADS, and students really love it. And I think it really gives them opportunity to explore various scenarios in depth. So I just dropped in the chat the link to Climate Interactive, where you can find more information about En-ROADS.
Right.
I see another question coming from the audience. Is there an inventory of games that we could consider? Where do we find these games? This is actually a great question. Like, it looks like there are so many resources, but sometimes those of us who are less experienced, we just even don't know where to start. Has anybody conducted perhaps a bibliographic review or put together a website with more information on use of games for teaching about climate change?
Well, I think that, again, there's such a variety and they're done in all sorts of places. And people don't necessarily think of saying, okay, I've got to put my game in a repository somewhere, but they kind of exist. There's an organization called ISAGA, and that has a special interest group on sustainability, in which they talk about games, and I think they're starting some kind of list. And I did that before once in the past, but that was quite a long time ago. But it's a huge job to list these things. I think the one thing you can do is to do it in Google. And then they're getting articles about climate change games. There are several articles that have been written, but there's no, as far as I know, there's no one place where people can go and get a wide variety. There are depositories, but they tend to be very focused on games made by one company. The EGU, the European Geosciences Union, has what you might call a special interest group on games, geo games. I don't know if the AGU has that, but it's fairly active. And if you go to the AGU EGU website, and Google Games, look for games, you probably pull it up. And every year we have a games evening on all sorts of things related to geosciences, not just climate change.
Thank you, David. That could be a very exciting project, for future collaboration.
Oh, yeah.
And perhaps, just putting together these resources. There is so much out there.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to thank again all speakers who have participated in this panel. We had some really insightful conversations. All this is going to be posted in a few weeks at www.gvsu.edu/CCS. I want to remind you that we have several events coming after lunch. At 2 o'clock, there will be a conversation about intercampus collaboration on climate change education, with the participation from all universities in Michigan. So please stay tuned between 2 and 3. And then we are also showing 2 documentaries today at 3 o'clock and at 4 o'clock. And you can just follow the program at the conference website. So thank you all, especially thank you, David, for joining us across the ocean. I know that's already late evening for you, perhaps, and we are all, I think, ready for lunch. Thank you again, everybody, and I will see you very soon on future webinars. Bye.